So it's pretty creepy now that I'm an adult and a mom, but actually when I was a kid it didn't feel like a big deal, even at the time. When I was about 7 years old, I went to Disneyland with my parents, 2 siblings, an aunt, 2 cousins, and an uncle. I was walking and holding hands with an older cousin. She was maybe 12. We were all together, but I was on the outside of the group, and we passed a railing, so my cousin let my hand go. I remember her saying, "bread and butter," as she let go. I was kind of walking by myself on the outside of the rail, but was only like a foot away from my group, and a dark-skinned man in a cowboy hat and buttoned-up shirt came up behind me and picked me up. I remember him holding me, kind of like cradled me, and I was looking up at him. I remember his face and mustache, but I didn't scream. I was just looking at him thinking, well, this is weird. But then I hear my mom yelling and chasing this man down as he's walking at a very quick pace with me. He just sets me down, runs off, and my mom comes and gets me. We go to security, but this was like 1999 or 2000, and they just sort of tell us that they couldn't find him. Now that I'm an adult, I really worry for whatever that man went on to do, because it's pretty obvious what he was planning to do with me, and he failed. Back when I was younger, around 12, there was a man who we will call Aiden, because his name was Aiden, and he's a fucking creep. So Aiden was in his late 30s at the time, and a close friend with the ballet instructor at the academy I attended. Performance time, cast list released. Aiden and I had to dance together. The performance was Coppelia, and I was playing the part of Aiden's prized doll. For his role, he is a doll maker, and he created Coppelia and falls in love with her. He thinks she is perfect, so he tries to bring her to life, but a group of kids from the village breaks into his doll making studio and mess with his stuff. Aiden always creeped me out, and I avoided him at all costs. Before this, that wasn't hard because we were in different classes, but now we are in the same dance class together. He always seemed to be trying really hard to intrigue me. He told me about his cats and how cute they are, and asked if I wanted to see them. I said sure, expecting him to whip out a cool new iPhone 3 and show me a picture, but instead, he offered to take me home after class and sleep over, because we had rehearsals in the morning and he could bring me back. It was Friday night, and oftentimes the weekends had rehearsals going all day. I said no thank you. He told me he had pointed shoes in his dance bag and offered to show them to me, but I would have to go into the boys' dressing room with him. It's becoming more common, but men wearing pointed shoes wasn't really a thing. It's definitely considered a female thing in the ballet world. He was telling me about them like the shoes were a hidden treasure or something. Our studio only had a handful of guys, and during that particular time, Aiden was the only guy that had to be there for this scene, so no one else would be walking into that room. I said no, but if he wanted to show me, he could bring them out. He never did. There was a particular scene in the ballet where the village kids had broken in, taken off my clothes, and one of the girls dressed me up as the doll to mess with the doll maker. Obviously, they don't really have a naked kid up on stage, but I did have to wear a nude leotard. It's like a flesh-colored one-piece swimsuit. Once the doll maker finds his doll stripped and shoved into the closet, he pulls out the doll and hugs it on the floor while he's crying over it. I am the doll. Aiden wanted to practice this a lot, a whole lot. He insisted that I wear my costume while we practiced. If you didn't know, a black leotard is standard attire for ballet class. So he was asking me to change into the exact same thing I'm wearing, but flesh-colored. He would ask me to come to the studio to practice our parts while no one else is there. It's not uncommon for leading roles to have keys so they can come and practice as much as they'd like. The first and only time I went to go practice with him alone, all he wanted to practice was the cry scene because he thought I needed to be more limp and I just wasn't doing it right. Sure, my part at this time is a lifeless doll, so anything I tried to move or tense up, he would tell me to relax, that I couldn't move, and to let his movements flow through me into my lifeless body. So, he wouldn't start until I changed into the nude leotard. We began practice. He was wailing over me, rubbing his hands all up and down my body, across my chest, my butt, everything. I really don't like confrontation. I've gotten a lot better as an adult, but as a kid I definitely just took things without fighting. Unfortunately, that was the case here. I did not ask him to stop or fight him. I was just scared and uncomfortable. He wanted to practice that scene for what seemed like an eternity, but I think it was about an hour or so. After I got home, I had Facebook messages from him. He was telling me how pretty I am and asked me if I knew what blowjobs meant and stuff, and started going in detail about how he and his ex-girlfriend would touch each other. I showed my mom the messages and told her what had happened at practice. She exploded and contacted the teacher about his actions. My teacher refused to have a meeting with us because of the issue and said I was banned from ever coming back. My parents were really confused and absolutely livid. I had danced with her company since I was a toddler, and we were all pretty close. She said he has been her friend for decades, and I'm lying and not welcome back. I was completely heartbroken, and honestly, my feelings are still pretty tender about that to this day. A few weeks later, the girl they had replaced me with also was no longer welcome back to the studio. My parents reached out to hers, and guess what? Aiden was speaking to her about inappropriate topics and made her daughter feel very uncomfortable because he insisted that she wore her nude leotard all the time, and his hand ran across her chest. And she ended up telling the teacher that she was scared. After that, Aiden got recast as a common villager. Funny, he gets to stay at the company, and another girl got the doll role. He did a lot of really creepy stuff. I could write a book about it. This is a rough summary of the filth that he is. Marcy was a good friend of my mom's, and she told me about what happened more than once as a way to scare me from trusting certain people. On February 14th, 1984, Marcy and two of her girlfriends went to a party at Casey Norwicki's apartment. She had never met him before, but it was known in my mom's circle of friends that there was something off about him. Later, after the party, Casey offered to drive the three women home, and during the drive, he crashed his car into a concrete viaduct. He did it on purpose. Her friends were okay, but Marcy had broken her ankle. Casey gave his car keys and some money to her friends for a taxi and claimed he was going to take her to the ER. He claimed he wanted to get away from the accident scene as soon as possible because he didn't have insurance. My mom has always been very angry with her friends that they did not insist on just taking her to the hospital. We let this stranger take her. That night, they still hadn't heard from Marcy and became really concerned. They called Casey multiple times, but only once were they able to talk to her. They said she sounded disoriented and drugged. She told them he'd never taken her to the hospital. She whispered she was terrified of him and wanted to go home. She then begged them to come and get her. The two women showed up at his apartment to return his keys and get Marcy. He would not open the door. My mom said they should have called the police and wonders why they did not at this point. Over the next few days, they came back repeatedly and asked him to let them in. They even said that they wouldn't return his keys unless they could see Marcy. Casey refused to let them in. Casey lied and told them that Marcy had left. They wouldn't leave, so he threatened to throw acid in their faces and kill them if they did not give him his keys and leave. I don't understand why they did not get help. My mom would cry every year on the anniversary and say she hated them because Marcy did not have to die. Weirdly enough, he did let others into his apartment during this time, one of who testified against Casey at his murder trial. What happened to her was horrifying. The full story did not come out for years. One of Casey's friends testified that Marcy was naked and handcuffed to a radiator with headphones on blasting music. This was a few days after February 14th, 1984. Casey told his friend that Marcy had taken too much THC. Everyone knows weed doesn't cause a person to be catatonic with saucer-sized pupils. Regardless, why chain a woman naked to a radiator because they took too much THC? Casey's friend Michael unchained her and gave her some food. Then Casey quickly chained her back up again. The friend bought some drugs from Casey and left. Another chance of being rescued gone. Casey was known for being incredibly unstable. He chose to chain his wife up to a radiator for days and as punishment for just about everything. The next day, Marcy's friend Michael came back to find Marcy still chained to the radiator naked with the headphones on. However, now she seemed much worse. She was completely disoriented, still under the influence of what would later be discovered as PCP, and now unaware of her surroundings. Another man came over and sexually assaulted Marcy. Her pupils were fixed and dilated, according to the friend. Again, someone could have helped her, but he did not. Michael, the friend of Marcy, who had fed Marcy, came over the next day to find her dead, lying on the floor wrapped in a blanket or rug. Casey, now Wiki, simply said, "She died on me." He refused to call the police and simply asked the friend to help him dispose of Marcy's body. In court, he claimed he did not help Casey bring her down to his truck, but two friends in prison, Casey said the friend did help, albeit reluctantly. Another witness who'd known Marcy for years claimed to have seen Marcy naked and chained to the radiator and deeply under the influence of just one day after her friends last saw her. Again, this is someone who'd known her for years but did not call the police. People were very scared of Casey. He told people that came to his apartment that she was a bitch and that she deserved it. He was unhinged and evil. Years after Marcy vanished, Casey said that he had raped, then strangled her. He also told people they'd never find a piece of her. Police searched his apartment and his mother's farm, in Indiana using something that looks for heat signatures, but they never found her. He was still convicted of her rape and murder in 2005 and sentenced to life in prison. Losing her friend this way affected my mom for years. She would pore over the newspaper articles at the library every year around the time it happened. She met Casey once, and she said he had the hair on her arms stand up. This happened about 30 years ago. I was delivering pizza. This was a Friday night and we were busier than normal. I had made a run to one of the better hotels after I got paid. I turned around and I noticed this really sick Jeep at the other end of the row. I thought to myself, I wouldn't mind having that. It was a base yellow with 4 lines of other colors that ran in a swirl in a check mark pattern, with a light bar on top and another one between the headlights, plus some oversized tires. I noticed that as I get in my car, the Jeep cranks up. As I pull out, it drops in behind me. I also noticed that it follows me back to the store. As I circle the building as we were supposed to do, I park and just happen to look across the street, and there the Jeep is sitting across the road. I thought that was funny until I left again, and it followed me again. It made every turn I made. If I decided to do 70 and a 35, it did too. If I did 20 and a 50, it did too. It followed me about 12 runs, about 2.5 hours. I'm not one to get scared. I never get upset or worried no matter the situation I'm in. But it had started to scare me. I had finally decided that if it followed me one more time, I would call the cops. Then suddenly, halfway through my next run, it just disappeared, which scared me worse than seeing him, because I did not know where he might show up, but I never saw him again. If you are new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.